Hey everyone, and welcome back to a new video. So Warhammer The Old World has been out for about a week now, and despite a bit of a delay on Games Workshop's part, it seems most people have been able to get their hands on the models, the core books and all the other supplements that have come with The Old World's launch. And it's been really exciting to see the new games being played, the modelling, the lore videos, but also the announcement of the first Old World event happening in just a few months. It's a really exciting first chapter for this game, and I love the energy and enthusiasm that's still going around the community right now. But at the same time, there is still a fair bit of discussion around the legacy factions in the Old World. So in this video, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what the legacy factions are, why they are what they are, and whether you should consider them when it comes to collecting an army in Warhammer The Old World. And as a bit of a spoiler, I definitely think you should, but probably not for the reasons that you might first expect. As always, I'm really keen to have a bit of a conversation about this, so if you have any ideas, please do post them in the comment section. But otherwise, let's take a closer look at the legacy factions themselves and start with the 9 factions that were announced last year as the main ones for the Old World. These are the factions around which the story of the Old World is going to be told. You can see there's a mix between good and evil factions. There's 9 in total, and not only will these factions receive new models and ongoing supplements and things like that, but crucially, they are tournament legal. These are the only factions with which you'll be able to turn up to an official Games Workshop tournament and play Warhammer The Old World. What that means is there's another set of factions who were relegated to the legacy factions, which won't receive those new models or the updates, and you can't certainly turn up to a tournament with them, an official tournament that is. And naturally that has upset a lot of people who love these factions, who have the models, who are getting ready with these models as the game was developing over the last few years, and then kind of suddenly felt like they're in the B grade category for the game, like their faction doesn't really warrant the attention, or maybe just doesn't feel like it's part of the game itself, and that's completely understandable. Now, the reason Games Workshop has given for why these factions are legacy factions is largely around the lore. In the period and setting in which the Old World is set, a lot of these factions are either in different territories doing their own thing, or have kind of broken down into civil war, or kind of lost their influence, and so they're not big players in the Old World itself. But at the same time, I do think there are some bigger reasons why these factions have been relegated in the way they are. The first one is molds. We know from a lot of the community articles that a big part of why the Old World has been able to come back in the format it is because a lot of passionate developers behind the scenes have been able to recreate the model molds that existed from way back in the day in Warhammer Fantasy. Now, we've seen from, say, some Paladin models that those models weren't always the best quality in the world, but nevertheless, it's been a huge undertaking to recraft a lot of these molds and to kind of painstakingly put the process back together backwards so that we can have these models return to the ranges in the sort of numbers and quantities that they need for this game to work. Now, when it comes to these particular factions, I think at least a part of the reason why they are legacy is because either some of their molds are missing or they're beyond repair, and Games Workshop simply can't bring enough of their range back in order to justify them being a balanced tournament level army. That's just speculation on my part, but having looked at how painstaking this mold recovery process has been and how long it has taken to bring all of these models back, or at least some of them, I just think it can't help but be a factor in why these factions are where they are right now, particularly the Chaos Dwarves. But I also think there's a bit of a capacity issue here. There's 4 factions on this list: the Lizardmen, Ogre Kingdoms, Skaven and Demons of Chaos, who all have pretty clear equivalents in Age of Sigmar, and in fact the Dark Elves are due to return under Malarian as the Umbraneth, and Chaos Dwarves are set to return as Chaos Dwarden, and I've done videos on both explaining why I think both are very likely to happen and when that might be. But the question I ask is it feasible for the design team to create new Ogre Kingdoms models, for example, while also updating the older Ogre Moor Tribes range in Age of Sigmar? Or, to use a better example, Skaven are set to get a massive range refresh in 4th edition AOS, and they really do need it, but would that refresh be as extensive as Skaven players hope it would be if they're also creating new Skaven models for the Old World? I don't think it's a particularly easy challenge to solve, and I think that's part of the reason why Beastmen have been made a main faction in the Old World game. Games Workshop never really sort of gave Beastmen much love in AOS. I think they had 1 or 2 new models, and if you look at the range, in fact, a lot of them are still that older Warhammer Fantasy style, and in fact that's part of the reason why they have sold out. Beastmen actually have one of the most extensive ranges in the Old World right now. But as a result, it means Games Workshop's been able to kind of move Beastmen off of that cross in the Venn diagram and over to one particular setting. They haven't got to worry about creating new Beastmen models necessarily in AOS, and in fact there is speculation that they'll be kind of relegated in AOS altogether. But the point I'm trying to make is that capacity does play a part here. Can Games Workshop make new models for these 7 factions while producing all of the other Warhammer models they do, not just in Warhammer The Old World, but all of the other Warhammer IPs? Probably not. And then when you couple that with the fact that there may be missing molds, there's a lot of overlap with AOS with these particular factions, and that the lore of the setting means that they're more inclined to focus on the existing 9 they already have, then that's why I think these ones are sitting on the bench for now. The exception to the rule is Chaos Demons. Games Workshop have already said that Chaos Demons will come to the game as an official tournament level faction in time, and the only reason they haven't yet is probably partly because of the reasons I mentioned, but also because in the current storyline and setting of the Old World, the winds of magic aren't particularly strong, so demonic incursions aren't particularly frequent, which means they don't want to have that faction kind of popping up here, there and everywhere. But that does show that they have made room for new factions, or I guess more so the legacy factions, to come into the game over time as the story demands it. That's one thing, but let's be frank, the Old World has sold remarkably well. Games Workshop staff have admitted they could not anticipate the amount of demand for this game, even though everyone was calling for it. And a lot of the sales reps for the independent retailers have said that they never expected this level of, people buying the game and jumping on the bandwagon. And I think at the very least that is going to get Games Workshop rethinking the scope and investment in the Old World, not just as a game but ultimately as a business product. They will follow the money at the end of the day, and if people are saying they are going to hand over their hard-earned cash for these particular factions, I think they are going to think about it very, very hard. And we may find that because of how popular the game has become, the story starts to go in new directions, it gets new investment, more people get put behind the teams that are crafting the story and designing the models for the game at the end of the day, and ultimately the game goes in a whole new direction because of the energy behind the community and the business right now. I think that just opens up some possibilities that perhaps Games Workshop itself wasn't aware of, and that's really exciting and probably could help alleviate some of the issues that legacy fans are feeling right now. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that as things stand, these factions are not getting any new models, their army lists are not getting updated, and they are still not tournament legal armies. And so that begs the question I asked at the start of the video: are they worth considering as your next Warhammer The Old World army? And my answer is absolutely yes. While they are not allowed at tournaments, I think for 95% of players that does not matter. For me, Warhammer's always been about rolling dice and having fun with my friends, and the state of play with these particular factions doesn't change any of that. The other thing is that while playing and collecting Chaos Dwarves might prove a little bit difficult now for obvious reasons, there are a lot of crossovers, as I said, between the Old World and Age of Sigmar when it comes to these particular factions, or at least most of them. And so you may find that some great proxies appear in AOS that you can bring over to your Old World army. Again, Skaven are getting a massive refresh, and so there's going to be a ton of options combined with a bit of kit bashing and creativity that you could use to create a really great looking Skaven army. And so at the end of the day, while it's not the ideal way to have new models coming into an Old World army, I think that having this legacy faction crossover mechanic that we've got might actually inspire some players to try out these legacy factions, and that might in turn, as I've already said, get Games Workshop thinking about new ways to bring these legacy factions off the bench. Anything's possible, but at the end of the day, I think we focus too much on the meta and what's competitive rather than what's fun and really inspires us. And I think that's what's really important, and that's what's possible with these particular factions. But anyways, these are just a few of my thoughts about legacy factions in Warhammer The Old World. I realise it's quite a controversial topic and not everyone's going to agree with me, but I'm keen to hear your thoughts in the comments section. What do you make about legacy factions? Are you collecting one yourself? And do you agree with me that maybe because of the popularity of Warhammer The Old World, that Games Workshop might reconsider having these factions on the bench, so to speak? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. But as always, a big thank you for joining me today. If you liked the video, please do click the like button and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to join me for future Warhammer videos, and I hope to see you for my next one. But until then, take care.